Hi, everybody. This morning we're going to conclude our chronology of the 1934 season in the shadows with a look at the postseason, Part 3, September to December. And as you might expect, a Negro League postseason was a different sort of postseason. In the white majors, postseason baseball was simple and straightforward. For almost 60 years, the 8-team National and American leagues would each play a complete and balanced schedule, after which the champions of the two leagues would face each other in the World Series. In the case of 1934, that meant the St. Louis Cardinals and Detroit Tigers. The World Series was an American institution and national obsession that put the icing on the cake of the Major League season. In contrast, the four Negro League World Series played in the two-league era of the 1920s were underpublicized, underreported, and generally financial disasters. These are the financial statements for the 1925 series between Hilldale and the Kansas City Monarchs. The entire seven-game series drew just 20,000 fans, an average of 2,867 per game. And that's in the roaring 20s, before the Depression, in a season where the white majors were averaging nearly 8,000 fans per game. In 1934, during the heart of the Depression, the white majors were averaging just 5,662 fans per game. I'm fascinated by the bleak picture painted by these MLB attendance figures for 1934. No team drew 1 million customers for the year. Only five drew 500,000. The eventual World Series winners, the St. Louis Cardinals, averaged just over 4,000 fans per game. Their crosstown brethren, the St. Louis Browns, averaged just 1,500. The bottom four teams in the majors averaged fewer fans per game than the 2023 Lake County Captains, a Class A minor league team in suburban Cleveland. And if that's all the white teams were drawing in the depths of the Depression, how do you figure black teams were faring? The reality is that black baseball, at least during the Depression, if not longer, was driven by big events rather than sustained series or seasons. The 4th of July doubleheader in Pittsburgh when Satchel Paige no-hit the Homestead Grays drew nearly 7,000. And the second East-West game in Chicago was an unprecedented success, drawing 25,000 fans in 1934. These big one-time events better suited the economic realities of black society, and they continued to dominate black baseball during the postseason. So while there was a best-of-7 championship series that we'll be looking at between the Chicago American Giants and Philadelphia Stars, it was upstaged in every way by a pair of four-team doubleheaders at Yankee Stadium. The greatest game ever played. Black baseball debuted at Yankee Stadium in July 1930 with a very successful doubleheader between the New York Lincoln Giants and Baltimore Black Sox. 20,000 fans saw Rap Dixon hit 3 home runs, while Chino Smith had a double, 2 triples, and 2 homers in the doubleheader split. In September of that year, the Lincolns and Homestead Grays played a pair of Yankee Stadium doubleheaders as part of their unofficial postseason championship series. But that was 4 years ago, and black ball clubs hadn't returned to New York's Cathedral of Baseball since. The sad fact was that in those Depression years, no promoter could afford to book such an event. But after the success of the East-West game in Chicago, Gus Greenlee was willing to attempt such a promotion, specifically a 4-team Sunday doubleheader featuring the New York Black Yankees, Chicago American Giants, Pittsburgh Crawfords, and Philadelphia Stars, with a main event heavyweight showdown between the two great pitching sensations of the season, Slim Jones and Satchel Paige. Their stats on the season per seam heads: Jones 21-6 with a 1.56 ERA. Satchel 14-3 with an identical 1.56 ERA. The two heavyweights had met twice early in the season, prior to Slim Jones establishing himself as something special. Their first meeting was on a Sunday afternoon in late May at Pittsburgh's Greenleaf Field. Thanks to a long home run by Josh Gibson, the Craws took a 5-3 lead into the ninth. But Philadelphia rallied for 7 runs off Satchel Paige to win the game 10-5. I can't find any specifics about that fateful ninth, but wonder if the 5 errors Pittsburgh committed in the contest contributed to their meltdown. They met again 3 days later under the primitive lights at Eagle Park in York, Pennsylvania. On the night Slim Jones announced his presence with authority. 9 innings pitched, 4 hits, no runs, walked 2, struck out 11. But that was in May, and no one was paying much attention. This is September in Yankee Stadium, and all of Harlem was abuzz in anticipation of the big showdown. But first, a preliminary contest between Chicago and New York. On the mound for the American Giants, Big Ted Trent, with Bill Holland starting for the Black Yankees. And Trent pitched out of a 9th-inning jam to escape with a 4-3 victory. Turkey Stearns hit a 2-run homer for the American Giants. Final score, Chicago American Giants 4, New York Black Yankees 3. Which brings us to the main event, the nightcap of the doubleheader, Pittsburgh Crawfords and Philadelphia Stars, Satchel Paige versus Slim Jones. In the bottom of the first, Jake Stevens drew a walk, moved to third on Dewey Creasy's hit, in the bottom of the first, Jake Stevens drew a walk, moved to third on Dewey Creasy's hit-and-run single, and scored on a Judd Wilson grounder. 1-0 Stars. In the fourth, Slim struck out Cool Papa Bell, Bill Perkins, and Oscar Charleston in succession. He added Josh Gibson leading off the fifth, giving him 4 straight Ks, 3 of them against future Hall of Famers. After 6 innings, Paige was pitching very well, but Jones was spectacular, striking out 8 of the 18 batters he'd faced without allowing a single base runner. With 2 out in the 7, after Slim had retired 20 straight, Oscar Charleston broke up the no-hitter with a base hit to center. 7th-inning stretch, it's still 1-0 Philadelphia. Judy Johnson led off the 8th for Pittsburgh with a base hit, which he stretched into a double when the ball was misplayed by right fielder Jake Dunn. Chester Williams bunted back to the mound. Some writers thought Slim Jones had to play at third, but he opted for the safe out at first base. Spoonie Palms, batting for Ted Page, worked a walk, and there were runners on the corners with 1 out. Jimmy Crutchfield came in to run for Palms. Leroy Morney slapped a single to center. Johnson scored. Crutchfield moved over to third, and Morney took second on the throw home. The game was tied. There were 2 men in scoring position and just 1 out. But Slim Jones induced weak pop-outs from Satchel Paige and Cool Papa Bell to escape further damage. The Stars went quietly in the bottom of the 8th. The Craws did the same in the top of the 9th. Darkness was falling. Yankee Stadium wouldn't get lights for another 12 years. Everyone understood there wouldn't be extra innings. Philadelphia had one last chance in the bottom of the 9th to take the game. Cheney White led off the inning with a sharp grounder to the hole on the right side. Second baseman Chester Williams made a great play to throw him out. Then Judd Wilson singled and somehow ended up on third after a wild throw by that same Chester Williams. With the winning run on third and just 1 out, Satch intentionally walked Biz Mackey and Mickey Casey to load the bases. The infield and outfield were pulled in. Webster McDonald batted for Pete Washington. Page struck out McDonald. Emil Brooks batted for Dick Say. Page struck out Brooks to end the game. The old master Satchel Paige hitched up his trousers and fanned McDowell and Brooks, two dangerous pinch hitters. Page was mobbed by his delirious admirers as he walked off the field. Yankee Stadium was in pandemonium at the end of this ball game. Many historians have labeled the showdown between Satch and Slim the greatest single game in Negro League history. The rivalry between the two great hurlers captured the imaginations of black fans and press. And like any great heavyweight showdown, the door was left open for a rematch. The four-team doubleheader was covered by at least two mainstream New York dailies. The conservative Times said the crowd was 20,000, while the more liberal Daily News agreed with the general press box consensus of 30,000. Either way, when that many black people got together at one time in one place, it was news in the white press. The Yankee Stadium attendance was far better than the numbers drawn that same afternoon for the Brooklyn Dodgers at Ebbets Field or New York Giants at the Polo Grounds. In time, the huge crowds gathered for the East-West games and Yankee Stadium doubleheaders would catch the attention of white baseball ownership. But that time, unfortunately, was still a long ways off. Negro National League playoff begins. The league championship series was supposed to have started with a doubleheader the day before the games at Yankee Stadium, but it rained in Philadelphia on Saturday, and the series didn't open until Tuesday. Game 1, Tuesday, September 11th, Passon Field in Pittsburgh. Willie Foster, Chicago, against Rocky Ellis of Philadelphia. Of course, the team's two aces, Ted Trent and Slim Jones, were unavailable to start the championship series due to a more pressing engagement. As we'll see, this sort of second billing would become the norm for the playoff series. Chicago won the opener 4-3. Mule Suttles drove in the winning run in the top of the ninth. In the bottom half, Philadelphia loaded the bases with two outs, but Biz Mackey grounded weakly to second to end the game. Willie Foster struck out 11 in the win. And so the teams left Philadelphia after playing just one game instead of three, and hooked up in Chicago 5 days later for a Sunday doubleheader. On a cold, windswept afternoon, the team's two aces finally opposed each other, Slim Jones versus Ted Trent. And Trent dominated, throwing a 4-hit shutout, while Turkey Stearns had Jones's number, accounting for all three Chicago runs with a triple and RBI single. Final score, Chicago 3, Philadelphia nothing. American Giants take a 2-0 lead in the series. Game 3, the second game of the Sunday doubleheader. Webster McDonald, Philadelphia manager who used to pitch for Chicago, against the American Giants' Willie Foster. Details are scant, but McDonald put the stars in the win column with a 5-3 victory. Jake Dunn's double and Pete Washington's triple highlighted Philly's 2-run rally in the fourth, and that's about all we know about the contest. Philadelphia Stars 5, American Giants 3. Chicago leads the series 2-1. The following afternoon, Monday, American Giants up 2-1 in the series. Rocky Ellis starting for Philadelphia against Shug Cornelius. Jack Marshall's 2 RBI single in the sixth was the difference as Chicago prevailed 2-1. That put the American Giants 1 win away from the title. And how did the Negro National League capitalize on the series building momentum? With a 10-day layoff. I don't know why, but after that game in Chicago on Monday the 17th, the series didn't resume in Philadelphia until Thursday the 27th. The teams continued to play games during the series hiatus, just not against each other. The Stars swept a doubleheader from the Black Yankees at Philadelphia's Passon Field. Slim Jones threw a two-hitter in the first game, striking out 9. Meanwhile, the American Giants were striking another blow against segregation by easily sweeping a three-game series from the Toledo Mud Hens of the American Association, one rung below white Major League ball. The American Giants also took the time to challenge the crosstown Cubs and White Sox to a city series to determine the champion of Chicago. The two white teams, with absolutely nothing to gain from such a competition, conveniently ignored the challenge. And so finally, after a week and a half off, the playoff series resumes. Game 5, Thursday night, back at Passon Field. The American Giants lead the best-of-7 series 3-1 and look to clinch the title with Willie Foster on the mound against former Hilldale bat boy Rocky Ellis for the Stars. And the Stars survived a tense 1-0 pitcher's duel to extend the series. Weak-hitting second baseman Dick Say drove in the game's only run with a 2-out single in the bottom of the 8th. Chicago still leads the best-of-7 series 3-2. Game 6 on Saturday, Ted Trent on the mound for Chicago against Paul Carter for Philadelphia. And the seldom used Carter, a surprising choice to start an elimination game, came through in a big way, tossing a 4-hitter to beat Chicago 4-1. Doubles by Emil Brooks and Pete Washington and a triple by Dewey Creasy netted the Stars 2 runs in the 5th. They added 2 more in the 6th on Biz Mackey's home run. But Philadelphia's win, which forced a decisive Game 7, was upstaged by a pair of disgraceful incidents. As described by Ed R. Harris in the Philadelphia Tribune, the first of the 2 incidents occurred in the 2nd inning. The Stars were at bat. Casey, first up, hit a bingle close to first. In the ensuing scuffle, he scrambled to second. Umpire Golson waved him back to first. Neither the decision or the play is being discussed here. I'm more interested in what happened subsequently. When the umpire sent Casey back to first, a violent argument ensued. Judd Wilson took up the cudgels for his teammate, and in the verbal barrage on ground rules with the ump became so enraged that he laid violent hands on Golson. His teammates pulled the 2 men apart before further damage was done. The second incident occurred in the 8th inning. Umpire Craig at the plate sent Scott of the Giants to first, claiming interference by catcher Brooks of the Stars. Another argument started, and Brooks laid his hands against Craig's face and pushed him away. After much heated palaver, play was resumed. Ironically, just 2 weeks earlier in the New York Age, umpire Bert Golston selected his all-star team for the 1934 campaign. Judd Wilson, the man who laid violent hands on Golston, was the arbiter's selection for team captain. And so the series is tied 3 games apiece with a decisive Game 7 wrapped in controversy after the actions of Wilson and Brooks and the inaction of the game's umpires, who allowed both players to stay in the game. So what do you suppose happens next? That's right. Time for another 4-team doubleheader at Yankee Stadium. Rebooked by popular demand, Colored World Series Classic Baseball Game doubleheader, sponsored by the Chauncey M. Hooper Association. First game, Pittsburgh Crawfords versus Philadelphia Stars. Second game, New York Black Yankees versus Chicago American Giants. 4 leading colored teams playing for the World's Championship at the Yankee Stadium, Sunday, September 30th at 1:30 p.m. The event was booked right after the success of the first doubleheader, before rain messed up the playoff series schedule. And with the series combatants now pushed to a Game 7 brink, there was no question at all that the playoff was going to take a back seat to the big games in the Bronx. And the main event, of course, was a rematch between Slim Jones and Satchel Paige to settle the score after their epic draw 3 weeks earlier. This time, the main event was the first game of the twin bill to ensure it would be played to a conclusion. And I want you to just think about this for a moment because it boggles my mind. The Philadelphia Stars are about to play Game 7 for the league championship, and there is absolutely no question that Slim Jones, the ace who got them this far, would pitch this exhibition against Satchel Paige rather than the title decider. Vic Harris singled for Pittsburgh with one out in the first and moved to second when Oscar Charleston walked. Josh Gibson grounded to second, but Dick Say fumbled the ball for an error. Harris scored. Charleston moved to third on the play. Judy Johnson lifted a pop fly between home and first. Stars catcher Johnny Hayes made the catch in foul territory, and Oscar Charleston, recognizing no one was covering the plate, alertly scampered home with Pittsburgh's second run. That might be my single favorite play of the whole 1934 season. Oscar Charleston scoring from third on a foul out to the catcher. Judd Wilson doubled in the fourth for Philly's first hit, but he was thrown out trying to stretch it into a triple. The Stars got on the board in the seventh. Dewey Creasy singled to center and scored on Biz Mackey's double over third. But Pittsburgh answered with an unearned run in the bottom half, aided by the usually sure-handed Dick Say's second error of the afternoon. Satchel shut the door on the Stars the rest of the way, and the Crawfords held on 3-1. Satch may have prevailed in the rematch, but the pitching lines of the two combatants were pretty similar. Slim Jones was let down by his defense, specifically second baseman Dick Say, and all three Pittsburgh runs were unearned. In the nightcap, double duty Radcliffe pitching for Chicago against Nex Stanley for the New York Black Yankees. And the Black Yankees staged a last inning rally to defeat Chicago 3-2 in a darkness-shortened six-inning affair. Fats Jenkins' 2 RBI double set up a bases-loaded walk-off walk by Bill Yancey to win the game for New York. And now the NNL playoff continues. Commissioner Rollo Wilson bans rowdyism in baseball. Bulletin. Commissioner W. Rollo Wilson took a determined stand against rowdyism in Negro baseball here Saturday and declared that offending players would be severely punished. That was back in April when newspaperman W. Rollo Wilson was named commissioner. And now Commissioner Wilson had the opportunity to live up to that promise. Judd Wilson and Emil Brooks both struck umpires in Game 6 of the playoff. Incredibly, neither man was disciplined by the umpires. Would Rollo step in, met out justice, and strike a blow against rowdyism? In a word, no. Stars manager Webster McDonald has told to historian John Holloway, Ronald, meaning Rollo, was our commissioner. Overnight, Bolden and Gottlieb had Ronald down to the hotel trying to let Boojum play. Ronald says, yes, he's going to play. Malarcher, the Chicago manager. Jiminy Christmas, he says. He knocked the man down. What's he have to do to get put out of the ball game? The Philadelphia Tribune's columnist Ed Harris had a more direct take on what had occurred. A foretaste of what is in the wind occurred last Monday when the moguls of the Philadelphia and Chicago clubs gathered before Commissioner Wilson to debate on the protest made by Dave Malarcher of the Giants. Dave protested the retaining of Judd Wilson in the Saturday game after he had struck umpire Golson. The commissioner was for keeping Wilson out of Monday's game, but Ed Bolden said if such a move was made, the Stars would not play if 50 or 50,000 people were in the park. And so Wilson and Brooks were both in the starting lineup for the decisive Game 7. It's Monday, October 1st, Shug Cornelius against Rocky Ellis. And things got off to a fiery start. From the Philadelphia Tribune, Near riot was precipitated when umpire Golson ordered Mule Suttles, the Giants' big left fielder, to the showers after the player hit him with his bat when he was called out on strikes in the second. Reedus replaced him after the visiting team was placated and the game resumed. A walk and 3 singles produced 3 Chicago runs in the third and drove Rocky Ellis from the box. He was replaced on the mound by manager Webster McDonald. But the Stars tallied single runs in the third and sixth to pull within 1. Extra base hits by Judd Wilson, who really shouldn't have been playing, figured in both runs. The American Giants picked up another run and entered the bottom of the 8th, leading 4-2. Ted Trent came on in relief to secure the final 6 outs for the championship. But Dewey Creasy led off with a double. Judd Wilson was hit by a pitch, and Biz Mackey walked. Bases loaded, nobody out. Jake Dunn singled, Creasy scored, the bases were still loaded, still nobody out. Bill Casey popped out, but Trent then walked Emil Brooks, who also really shouldn't have been playing, to force in the tying run. With the bases still loaded, Trent found his composure and retired Washington and McDonald to get out of the jam. Thanks for that. Neither side scored in the 9th, and the contest ended a 4-4 tie. I'm not sure why they didn't play extra innings. It was getting dark, but Passon Field did have lights. It was probably just economically preferable to keep the lights off and start a new game with a new paid admissions tomorrow. So that's what they did. Game 8, Tuesday, October 2nd. The series is tied 3-3 with 1 draw. Shug Cornelius starting his 2nd consecutive game for Chicago, and Slim Jones on the mound in the decider for Philadelphia. And as the headline says, Jones hurls Boldens to championship. In addition to throwing a complete game shutout, Slim Jones drove in Philly's insurance run with a base hit in the 7th. Final score 2-0. Stars win the series 4-3 with 1 tie. From Ed Harris of the Philadelphia Tribune, the win of the Stars brings to a close the long and tedious extending series, which was marked by arguments, fights, and other disturbances. Ed Bolden's club came back from a 3-1 deficit to claim their first title in only their 2nd season of existence. The Stars would compete in the Negro National League for another 14 years without claiming another championship. Dizzy and Daffy. 1 week after the Stars claimed the NNL crown, the St. Louis Cardinals bested the Detroit Tigers in a 7-game World Series. Leading the way for St. Louis was an Arkansas hillbilly named J. Hannah Dean, known to the world as Dizzy. The flamboyant right-hander won 30 games for the Cards in 1934 and then hurled a shutout in Game 7 to clinch the series. Pictured here humbling a toy tiger in the clubhouse after that victory, Dizzy Dean was arguably the most famous person in America in October 1934. Dizzy had a brother, Paul, known to the papers as Daffy, who won 19 games as a rookie that season. Dizzy and Daffy were the talk of the nation and planned to capitalize on their celebrity while the getting was good. They devised a barnstorming tour to give the nation a chance to see the Dean brothers in action. Oklahoma City, Wichita, Kansas City, Des Moines, Chicago, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Baltimore, Paterson, New Jersey, Cleveland, Columbus, and Pittsburgh. 14 games in 14 days in 13 cities, starting the very day after Dizzy's Game 7 win. In each city, the Dean brothers would either join a local semi-pro team for the day or assemble a club of local professionals and call them the Dizzy Dean All-Stars. Their opponents for 13 of those 14 games were leading Negro League teams. The Kansas City Monarchs were the opposition for the 6 Western games that opened the tour, while the Philadelphia Stars, New York Black Yankees, and Pittsburgh Crawfords played in the Eastern games. For the record, the black teams won 8, lost 4, and tied 1 for a 667 winning percentage. If you want to learn about the Dean's Barnstorming Tour, I highly recommend Phil Dixon's thoroughly researched book on the subject. Particularly revealing in Dixon's narrative is the vast difference in how white and black players and teams were treated in the media. Unsurprisingly, the black players were barely acknowledged and given absolutely no credit for anything they accomplished. It was as if the Deans were the Harlem Globetrotters and their black opponents the invisible and anonymous Washington Generals, with the difference being that the Generals here were regularly kicking Globetrotter butt. There are a few dates from the tour that directly connect to our narrative. On the day Dizzy Dean was honored as National League Most Valuable Player, his All-Stars were being swept in a doubleheader by the NNL champion Philadelphia Stars. Webster McDonald pitched a 4-hit shutout in the opener. The starting pitchers for the nightcap were Dizzy Dean and Slim Jones, and no one in the white media was aware of the significance of that. Dean pitched 2 shutout innings, allowing 3 hits and striking out 3 before calling it a day. Slim was the 4-3 winner in the 7-inning contest, striking out 8. The only black baseball player white America had any awareness of was Satchel Paige, and the Dean Barnstorming Tour ended with 3 games against the Pittsburgh Crawfords, with Dizzy and Satch opposing each other in all 3 contests. The first one of these was held on a Sunday afternoon at League Park in Cleveland. The Craws won 4-1. Dean gave up a run and 4 hits in 3 innings of work. Satchel upstaged the great Diz by hurling 6 perfect innings, striking out 13 of the 18 batters he faced. They met again the next night in Columbus, with the Craws topping the All-Stars 5-3 in an underattended and underreported match. The Deans each allowed 3 hits and 1 run in their 2-inning turn on the mound, and were the big attraction until a house just outside the ballpark caught fire. Then most of the 800 fans deserted the ball game to witness the blaze. The tour ended with fireworks at Forbes Field in Pittsburgh. The Crawfords' Vic Harris was called safe at second on a close play in the 5th inning. Dizzy Dean, playing left field at the time, came in to argue the call and somehow convinced the umpire to reverse his decision. Harris responded by throwing punches at the ump. The benches emptied, fans poured onto the field from the stands, and police were required to restore order. Remarkably, the game continued after what the white press described as a riot. Pittsburgh won their 3rd game against the Deans 4-3, but that result received far less attention than the fight. The Dizzy and Daffy Barnstorming Tour drew over 100,000 fans and was said to have netted the Dean brothers between $10,000 and $12,000 each. To put that in context, Dizzy earned $7,500 from the Cardinals in salary for his MVP season. I'm sure the black participants made a little money themselves, probably peanuts compared to the white headliners, but it was a positive step in the right direction that a couple of Arkansas hillbillies could play and get beaten by black opponents with all of America watching. The aftermath. The year 1934 in black baseball ended much like it began. Tom Wilson's team of all-stars were back in the California Winter League, tearing it up against white major leaguers. And Fats Jenkins was on the courts, captaining the best basketball team in the country, the New York Renaissance. The bitter aftermath of the championship series lingered long into the winter. American Giants owner and league treasurer Robert Cole refused to pay the salary due to Commissioner Rollo Wilson in retribution for Wilson's ruling against Cole's team in the Judd Wilson affair. After Thanksgiving, Rollo finally delivered an official ruling in which he turned down Chicago's protest. His reasoning was rather remarkable. The commissioner holds that the conduct of the umpires in the game in question was unjustifiable, but at the same time rules that he, being a spectator, had no authority to overrule them on that particular game. Rollo Wilson also resigned as Negro National League commissioner, quit his newspaper job, and accepted a government post with the Internal Revenue Service. American Giants manager Dave Malarcher was dumbfounded by Wilson's reasons for declining the protest. In view of all these facts, the commissioner states that he, being a spectator, could not rule on the matter. Now, what sort of commissioner is that? He tells you that the umpire erred and that he saw him. And the umpire tells the commissioner under oath that he erred. And still the commissioner says that he cannot allow the protest. If he cannot allow a protest under this condition, when and under what condition will he allow a protest? A few weeks later, gentleman Dave Malarcher stepped down as manager of the American Giants, concluding a 19-year career that began with C.I. Taylor's Indianapolis ABCs. In Voices from the Great Black Baseball Leagues, Malarcher tells John Hallway he retired because of the bus rides that replaced the train travel he'd enjoyed most of his career. But the timing of these events suggests to me that the playoff series debacle likely contributed to Malarcher leaving baseball. In 1934, Gus Greenlee's Pittsburgh Crawfords were clearly ahead of Cum Posey's Homestead Grays in the local baseball wars. But it wouldn't be long before the gangster was supplanted by the baseball man. Greenlee's empire began to crumble in 1937 after the government started investigating his business, while most of the Crawford stars were defecting to the Dominican Republic. By 1939, Greenlee Field had been razed for a housing project, and the team was playing in Toledo. Several of the Crawfords' best players, including the incomparable Josh Gibson, became the cornerstones of the Homestead Grays dynasty of the 1940s. I think the first thing that attracted me to the 1934 season was the idea that this was Satchel Paige's greatest year, but the league MVP was a different pitcher altogether. The dynamic between Satch and Slim Jones in many ways defined the season. We all know what became of Leroy Satchel Paige. But before we close the book on 1934, I want to take a moment to reflect on the sad story of Stuart Slim Jones. Following his historic season, the 21-year-old Jones was the toast of Black Philadelphia. By all accounts, he celebrated mightily that winter and developed a big drinking problem. He showed up for the 35 season out of shape, developed a sore arm, and struggled to a 4-5 record with an ERA north of 5. The famous fastball was gone, and Slim Jones would never recover the magic of his 1934 campaign. I mentioned in the opening of this series that prime Slim Jones reminds me of early Vida Blue and Dwight Gooden. All three were electrifying and often unhittable presences on the mound at a very young age. Vida Blue and Dwight Gooden each had well-publicized problems with cocaine that momentarily derailed their careers and landed each in a Tony rehab facility. Unfortunately, life for a Black athlete in the 1930s was much harsher. The legend, passed down for generations, says that Slim Jones froze to death on the streets of Baltimore in November 1938 after hocking his overcoat to buy booze. Most tellings of the tale include Ed Bolden refusing Jones's request for a salary advance, precipitating the sale of the coat. Recently, intrepid researchers have debunked the legend and tracked down the real story. The truth is less melodramatic, but no less tragic. Slim Jones passed in a Baltimore hospital, suffering from kidney failure and numerous infections brought on by his heavy drinking. He was just 25 years old. Among my sources for this presentation were Phil Dixon's Dizzy and Daffy Barnstorming Tour, James Riley's biographical encyclopedia of the Negro baseball leagues, the Saber book on the 34 Philadelphia Stars, and I forgot to include it on the slide, but John Holloway's Voices of the Great Black Baseball Leagues. Websites consulted include RetroSheet and the Saber Bio and Games projects. The statistics and portraits came from seamheads.com, clippings from newspapers.com, the ProQuest Historical Black Newspapers database, thank you, Saber, and the resources of the Cleveland Public Library. And my most important resource is a pair of scrapbooks I assembled some 35 years ago, containing coverage of 1934 in the two leading Black newspapers of the time, the Pittsburgh Courier and Chicago Defender. I'd like to thank our collaborators, Community Cup Classic Foundation, Lifeline Sports, P5, the Partnership, and yours truly. And special thanks to our most valuable partner, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture.